Welcome back everybody to another episode of MOTOBOB Vlogs, and today I'm heading out on my first ride of this absolute weapon. It's the brand new 990 Duke from KTM. Now the 890 Duke was one of my favourite bikes to ride on the road in terms of sportiness and that tautness and that fun. And so despite a fairly significant redesign, new engine, I think new frame, and obviously a change to the styling package as well, you know, I'm hoping this is still more of the same, just elevated a little bit. Now, this is genuinely my first ride on this bike, so this is going to be my proper first impressions. It got dropped off yesterday, so I thought I'd get a quick spin on it this morning, and also got a bit of rain forecast later today, a bit of tomorrow, and it's not a bike you want to be doing your first ride on in the wet. I really want to experience what this bike is like and see how it compares with that 890. And also recently we reviewed the Yamaha MT-09, which at just over 10 grand I think is a phenomenal naked bike. There's also the SP model of that bike available with the Öhlins suspension and the Brembo brakes, and arguably that's a really close competitor of this bike, both in that sort of 900 class, typical naked riding position, and very much at the sporty end of the spectrum, both packing that modern aesthetic as well and plenty of tech. The only thing with this bike is, versus the 890R, the price has gone up quite a bit, so it is on the slightly more expensive end of the spectrum. But genuinely, I did think the 890 Duke was top tier, and so maybe this bike is worth top tier money. Jeez, down into second and give it less than half a throttle, and there's that typical LC8C, the parallel twin in this bike, that typical surge and sort of really strong pull as it climbs through the revs. And thankfully this bike is properly running. At the moment, with a lot of the new press bikes coming in, they might have a few hundred miles on them and still have the shift light flashing at you at, 5,000 RPM, but I think this one's been through its first service, thankfully. One thing about this bike is that the dash is mounted sort of on the bar clamps there, and so it's quite a lot closer to you than on a lot of other bikes where it's more so mounted up above the headlight here, and it does make it feel very snub-nosed. There's not a lot of it in your peripheral vision. And of course it's more of a glance down at the dash. Not that that's particularly a problem, just something I've noticed that's different about this bike to some of the other nakeds. Crikey, bit of grey coming up there, so yeah, I think I've got about an hour tops. It's currently in street mode, so let's have a little look at what we can stick it into. Love the menus and graphics that they use on these KTMs and Husqvarnas. They do make it quite easy to get around. Into ride mode, so we've got street, rain, hopefully won't need that, track, might be a bit bonkers, performance, and sport. Let's have a little go on sport. Now, it was lively enough in street, but we'll stick it in sport and see how that feels. Also, getting some lovely little pops and crackles from the exhaust when you're going down the box. I'm not sure if you'll quite hear them with my in-helmet mic, but trust me, it's just got like this little, rally car sound, which I really like, and it's not necessarily that loud, but it just gives it a slightly sporty sound to it. I think it's one of KTM's little signature features. All their bikes seem to do that a little bit. It's like trying for excellent at giving their standard emissions compliant exhaust systems plenty of bass, and that's a common characteristic I've noticed of their bikes. Whereas these, the sound is a little thinner maybe, but yeah, definitely get those little characterful extras when you're decelerating. Gosh, this is absolutely rapid, and I'm not pushing it super hard, but it just rails around corners. I do this little route a lot. It's my way out to some of the other roads that I use around here, and it's a good controlled test, consistent road. I mean, it's dry today, which is good. Not so much road debris. But still, already, I feel extremely comfortable on this bike. Easy to ride, easy riding position, but super fast. Absolutely bags of power for road riding. And then the chassis just feels, you know, it's quick. It'll obviously turn very quickly. Great tyres on this bike. I think they're the S22s, are they, or S23s? Holds its line, like I say. It makes you feel like you can just rip through corners. But at the same time, quite approachable, I'd say. Not harsh, doesn't feel twitchy or unstable. We've got a steering damper down there. Might have something to do with it. And yes, I remember now why I thought this bike was so good, or the previous gen. You know, it's almost like now, with it being a 990, there's certainly less of a case for the bigger sibling, the 1390, because this is absolutely all the bike you'll need on the road. And maybe that's got something to do with the little bump in price, is that they know that this bike looks super capable and like all the bike you'll need. And yeah, this week I'm riding them back to back. The 1390 Super Duke R Evo is the next press bike we got scheduled in, and so I'm going to ride this up to KTM's headquarters at Silverstone, do a comparison video, and then bring that back for a bit more reviewing afterward. And so yeah, it's going to be really, really interesting to see if there's anything to say as a case for buying a 1390 from a road perspective anyway, for a pretty average rider like myself. Because this feels fantastic, and also with the new aesthetics, the new headlight, which looks more 1390-esque, it also has a slightly more filled out and butcher appearance. It doesn't really look like a middleweight anymore. It's getting into that big bike kind of stance to it. All right, quick stop off to have a look at what we've got going on here. So KTM's own branded brakes made by JH1. They're 4-piston, radially mounted. It is in fact S22s on this bike as well. WP Apex suspension, which is always good stuff. And we've got some adjusters up here. So you've got compression on one leg and rebound on the other. And of course, it's a WP Apex shock underneath here as well. LC8C engine, just over 120 horsepower, I believe. Steel trellis frame. You've got your cast aluminium subframe here now with the airbox sort of integrated in there. The intakes are up here, and a very neat looking back end. This looks a bit Super Duke R style, this exhaust now. And then we've got the integrated turn signals and brake lights. So yeah, like I say, very, very clean looking. Different seat angle. I think it tips forward, and the tank shape is slightly different as well. And then of course, this may be slightly controversial looking headlight, although I will say, for me, I prefer it to the previous gen, which had a more filled out lens over it. This has got the daytime running lights around the edge and then projectors in the middle, and I quite like it, but let me know what you think of it down in the comments. Right, let's go for another rip. It's a very nimble feeling bike, easy to get on with. I think a big factor is the weight. It's about 190 kilograms fueled up, I believe, which of course helps with that forward thrust on the gas. But yeah, it just makes it feel easy to ride and like you can just stick it wherever you want it, sort of thing. I'm gonna put it back into street. I don't know, sometimes some bikes on the road are a little more pleasant to ride in their street mode, just with the edge taken off the throttle, especially in some of these lower speed corners. Nice quick shifter, it's firm, might free up a little bit maybe, with more riding, with more miles on the bike, but doing its job nicely. Similar really to the MT09, to be honest. And the big thing that differentiated them before, gosh, was the riding position on the MT09 was a bit weird. It had those super tall handlebars that made it feel a bit supermoto style. And they've changed that for this year to make it much more in line with other naked bikes. So the bars are down and forward a bit, pegs up and back, and it feels a lot more similar to this. They have tweaked the riding position, like I say, a little bit on this bike, but really it's the MT09 that's gone through that drastic change that now makes them feel a lot more similar, and the MT09 is less of an outlier. Oh, front wheels going very light up the hill there, just in second with about a third throttle. Yeah, the thing that now really differentiates them, without that big difference in riding position, is just the engine. If you like a triple or a twin, that's going to be a massive factor. Both got cruise control, both got phone connectivity, both got a TFT dash, both reasonably well laid out, plenty of riding modes, 6-axis IMU, both, what can I say, get a mixed reaction from the headlight, both on the modern end in terms of design, but the twin in this bike has more of that growl the typical KTM. Is it 435 degree firing interval in these parallel twins? Basically meant to replicate their 75 degree V twins, like the one in the 1390. Whereas that MT-09's got that smooth triple je ne sais quoi, which a lot of people really enjoy. It's just something about a triple, and it's got its own sound as well, and it really does sound good with those amplifier grills that give you a little bit more bass in the cockpit here. Price as well, sorry. Engine, character, and then the price. You can get an MT-09, like I say, for 10,100. This starts at 13 grand. Maybe the SP is more similar to this bike with a slightly better spec of suspension and brakes. But still, I think that one's something like 12,000 something. So you're still going to have to pay a little bit more for this bike, even in that spec. Bit of little back road just to see how it feels in terms of comfort over these less than ideal road surfaces. And I would say, generally not too bad. Quite a comfortable saddle. It's got width on its side anyway, certainly toward the back. Not that harsh on the edges. More forgiving perhaps than I was expecting in terms of the padding, because some KTMs and Husqvarnas can be quite harsh. I mean, it's certainly not like a big aftermarket comfort gel seat, but I think this is actually the right balance for this sort of bike. And like I was saying earlier, for me, WP's suspension packages are always really good, and the ride quality is nice. Not much dive. It's just one of those bikes that really is hard to find the flaws of, providing you don't mind the aesthetics and you accept that you're going to pay a little bit more for something this good. Lovely, lovely stuff. A phenomenal bike, I can tell already. Still plenty of riding to do though, and like I say, some comparisons and things like that coming up, but initial first impressions are that it's every bit as good as the previous one. And in a way, I'm quite liking this new visual vibe, although we do have the Husqvarna 801 coming at some point, which is a bit more classic, retro inspired with that modern edge that you get from Husqvarna. Doesn't have the performance of this bike, but still 100 horsepower, so looking forward to checking that one out, and maybe that'll be more my cup of tea styling wise. But yeah, let me know what you think of it down in the comments below. Love to know how you're all doing and what you've been up to. Hope everyone's been out riding while we've had this phenomenal weather for a few days over the weekend. Looks like it's about to take another bad turn. Story of the year. Not been the easiest time to get out and make motorbike videos, but when you get a clear morning like this, a bike like that, you know, I do feel rather lucky having this as my vocation. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.